Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Binance Podcast. My name is Wei Zhou. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Binance. So what I want to do with this show is to spend time talking to specialists, entrepreneurs, scholars, influencers, basically leading people from a variety of industries. Hopefully, through these conversations, we can share insights on how blockchain is changing not just these different industries, but also in changing the world. Here's a quick disclaimer. All opinions expressed by our host and our guests on this podcast are merely their own opinions. They do not imply any endorsements or opinions of their companies. You should not take these opinions as specific investment advice, as you will be solely responsible for your own investment. Hey everyone, this is Wei. Finally back. It's been a couple of weeks off, busy traveling around and then launching different things at Binance. But I'm really excited to have a very special guest, Gong, who is the director for Binance Futures. As of recording yesterday, Binance Futures has been online for about 10 days.
Yes.
And then we just had our record high trading last night with a crazy day in the Bitcoin world and in the crypto world as a whole. Our system held up quite well, and we had record volume so far. Mm-hmm. So as we continue to build on the futures platform for Binance, I thought it'd be a really good opportunity for Aaron to come here to introduce himself, talk a little bit about his personal background, because I think we've continued to add talented people here, because Aaron has been a veteran with CME, mm-hmm. Which actually has a competing futures product in the US, and then spend a little bit of time about how he came into cryptocurrency, and then talk a little bit about the Binance Futures product, and then general outlook in terms of the market, and we'll let Aaron take it over from here. So thank you for joining the podcast. We're family here, so I'll be nice.
Thanks for having me, Wei.
Yeah. So I would love to hear a little bit about your background.
Mm-hmm.
Professionally, personally, anything you want to talk about.
Sure. So I joined Binance in early this year to build the futures business, and starting from the technology and then product, and then we finally launched slightly more than a week ago. And before I joined Binance, I was spending my entire career in traditional futures market, starting my career in a Dutch prop trading firm, then a New York-based managed futures hedge fund, then worked for CME to looking after their APAC clients. Although it's a different experience right now, but I think lots of careers just joined the same paths and worked out perfectly so far.
Tell me a little bit about how did you get into the futures business? What did you study? Did you study finance out of college, or?
Actually, I studied financial engineering in college, mm-hmm. and then there was a school tour, and we went to Chicago, and then the two arranged us to visit the pit. Mm-hmm. The actually pit, which people are trading via the hand signals, and in Chicago, and actually it was CME pit.
No, the pit and the CME. Oh, yes. Wow. Okay.
Yes. So it really excited me, and then back then I saw lots of excitements going on in the pit, and I thought, okay, this probably is the career I'd like to pursue. And then after I got graduated, and then I started to looking for jobs, and luckily I found a job to join a Dutch market making firm.
This is in the US or
in the US? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then how did you make way from that futures trading firm to actually working for CME?
Well, because I was doing a pretty much desk job for a couple years, and then I really would like to explore the business side of the futures industry. Mm-hmm. And then there was the opportunity opened at CME in Hong Kong. Actually, they are looking for someone who has the trading background and also knows traders to join the firm to expand their Asia business. So I took this opportunity and then started my journey with CME for 7 years.
What were your responsibilities? Like, what kind of work did you do? So you actually moved from the US then to Hong Kong to work for CME. Mm-hmm. Is it more of a trading job? Is it more of a sales job? What kind of specific roles?
It was a more sales job because back to US, CME is pretty much dominant in US market with more than 90% shares. And then back then, 7-8 years ago, CME decided to expand to international market, and Asian market was very important segment back then. And actually, I was the third person in CME Hong Kong office.
Okay.
So we started from there and started pretty much like an internal startup project. start in a service office, then expand to like a dozen people in Hong Kong. It worked out pretty well. And
what kind of clients were you pitching to?
Mostly prop trading firms. By definition, they are managing their prop trading capitals. And surprisingly, after I got here, I found like most of them are still trading cryptos. So small world. Yeah.
Yep. So a lot of these prop trading firms, they're Asian based.
Yes.
Right? Or are they Asian money or are they Western money that sort of like park themselves in Asia? And then what were sort of like the product offerings at CME that you sold them?
Okay, so largely there are two groups. The first group is just the branch office of the US or European firms. So they just set up office in Asia, but they are still trading like US-centric products, but they are just covering the Asian hours. And the second group are just the homegrown groups in Asia. Asia is more complicated than US and Europe because there are so many countries with different language, cultures, and different products in their home country. So, for example, Japan, they start Nikkei as their flagship product, and so people from Japan, they are most familiar with the Nikkei market. And then in Korea, they've got Kospi, right?
Yep.
And then so lots of these diversifications are mingled together, which create a very interesting market. But in the meanwhile, it also requires CME to put lots more resource and develop more Asian relevant product.
Yeah, because I have some friends who are doing who run their own sort of like you mentioned, their prop desks or prop firms. And basically one thing I learned it's like 10, 15 years ago is that Kospi Futures is like the biggest market in the world for some reason. Like I have no idea why, but
well, because after I joined here, I probably can figure out why. Because Korean market, they have a very wide span of age gaps in terms how many percentage of people across different age, they all love to trade futures product. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. Okay. So you were at CME and then you cover basically Pan-Asia, right? Like out of Hong Kong, you probably cover like China, Japan, Korea, all of Southeast Asia. And then what did you notice in terms of like the change in the industry dynamics during that time? Like, because you mentioned some of them were, Western, or rep offices or trading operations, or some of them were homegrown. Like, I would imagine you're probably seeing a lot more or an increase in terms of the homegrown, the local native ones, or guys spun off raising money locally and trading locally, right?
Yes. I think back to CME days, when I first joined CME, and the China market was just a very small, tiny portion of the entire Asian business, and it was even smaller than like Malaysian and also even Philippine. But the major growth actually became the key driver of the entire Asian revenue, and it was because of China. And because China opened doors, and also lots of clients start to get familiar with the US products, and that's the major difference, I would say. The incremental new revenue versus like existing business. The existing business grows a lot slower, but the incremental money in China just take it from the seat.
Are there any local competitors to CME in Asia?
Yes. In Asia, we would think Hong Kong Exchange and Singapore Exchange, and also like Osaka Exchange, and also like Korean Exchange. They are our major competitors, and even though Chinese exchange, we would think they are our competitor, but they are mostly government-owned, so it's kind of different nature. They have strong suits of more local market-relevant product, and also strong support of the local client base.
Okay. Now this is where I think the conversation gets exciting, and for a lot of the Binance listeners, rather than sort of, I would say, the financial listeners, is we're going to move into cryptocurrency, right? I think I met you sort of near the end of last year,
correct?
Right? And then where you basically were thinking of doing something new, right? You've been at a corporate job for a bit, and then you want to take the dip, right? What were your thinking then? Like, when did you get bit by, I would say, the crypto bug or the Bitcoin bug?
Well, compared to most of the guys here, even you, I got into crypto pretty late. To be honest, I was not 100% convinced like 2 or 3 years ago about crypto until two things happened. first one was a internal training back then in CME days, and there was a options training done by like a pretty famous legendary options trader, and he said two things happened in 1973. First one is options first being listed in the exchange, and the second thing was two professors called Black and Scholes.
Yep.
They wrote a paper about options pricing.
Okay.
And decades years later, nowadays options being traded like $1 trillion revenue every year, and also Black Scholes won the Nobel Prize, right? So okay, this really inspired me. And okay, if crypto is the next big thing as options, then probably I should not miss it, right? And also,
I mean, that's something that I think a lot of the existing audience in crypto don't really understand, is that
correct.
In their securities market, futures is way bigger than spot.
Yes.
Right. And primarily right now, some of the exchanges that exist out there in crypto are pretty just generic spot trading firms.
Right.
Whereas if you look at sort of the larger volumes, it's actually been on exchanges that have, a real futures product, right?
Right. So even took yesterday's volume, for example, we are almost like same as spot volume. So just for a product less than 10 days.
Yeah. You saw potential opportunities here, right?
Yes.
And and then obviously we tried really hard to get your team in here, and then we're able to get the team in, right? And then you actually helped to recruit some of the team members, right? No names, but can you give a little bit of background about the team that you brought in and the teams that has been working and building the project?
Okay, so basically the strong foundation of the Binance Futures business is the matching engine, right? So we've got who built the matching engine for traditional exchange in the US, and then they brought their expertise to build the matching engine for Binance Futures. And why this is so important? Because there are lots of issues with some competitors slow of their matching engine, which create the lags. Yes. So that's why we paid a lot of attention to build the fastest engine, I would say, in the crypto industry, and then it's laid out the strong foundation for our growth.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Binance is known for is actually for our matching engine, for the spot exchange, right? Which has probably the fastest and the largest capacity, I think, in the industry. And I think, at least from my knowledge and what I've seen, is that the teams work together pretty closely in terms of leveraging on some of the know-how from the spot exchange.
Correct.
And then took the technology that you brought in as well.
Right.
Yeah. Can you give a little bit of background about some of the sort of like the bios of some of the team members?
Okay, so we've got some. So basically, our team includes the technology part and also the risk part and also the business part, right? So I just introduced the technology part, which they laid a strong foundation for our matching engine, and second part is the risk part, and because the difference between the futures business and also spot business, the key elements is risk designs, right? Because you've got margins, you've got liquidations and insurance funds, and also auto deleverage, and these have to be, conceptually speaking, these are just very simple terms, but the devil is in details.
Correct.
Right. So lots of competitors, they've got poor risk designs, which caused lots of complaints from clients. But we've done lots of research and also math work and also tests to get this part right. And the third part of the team is business side, and which is led by me and also Justin, which worked with me closely. And we were focused heavily on how to bring the incremental revenue for Binance from both international market.
I'll speak from Binance's perspective. Like I think strategically we were very careful about futures products, given some of the mission behind Binance is to deliver the freedom of money, right? And I think overall around the world, Binance I think has very good reputation, right? In terms of client service, in terms of always putting customer first, right? And one of the key concerns about delivering a Binance branded futures product, or now we have two, but is the the margin call, right? Is actually the some of the features where customers put money in, they can actually lose it, right? Which is one of the unique characteristics of it, right? And then we had a very long struggle internally about whether we want to have this product, right? But I think one of the two key things is one, the system has to be fair. Right, yes. The system has to be fair, and the execution of it has to be fair.
Correct.
And the rules have to be transparent.
Correct.
Right, and the system has to be, I would say, have fail-safes in place in case of high stressful situations. Right, and I think what you mentioned is that a lot of these philosophies went into the design of our system, right, which makes it what we call, say, a better iteration of what exists in the market today. Right, can you comment a little bit about our risk management system?
Okay.
And how our system as is, I would say, not more fair, but has more transparency and better execution.
Okay, I will just use a couple examples.
Sure.
First one is that we use index price as mark price for liquidation instead of last trade price.
Yep.
Because we've seen lots of manipulations in crypto world, especially in futures market, and some of the manipulations done by some like
actors. Various actors in the industry. Yep.
Yes, and caused lots of wrong liquidations, and which caused bleeding from the clients in other exchanges. So that's why we used index price as mark price, because it's harder to manipulate.
Correct. I think some of the competitors out there, they depend on where they get their prices.
Yes.
Right, and then with enough force, if you can move prices on the referenced exchange, then you can actually cause a one-time blip on the price or the quoted price on the futures exchange, which we've seen. Right.
Yeah. And also we've got a slower number of other features could protect the users better. And for example, our insurance fund is probably the only insurance funds is taking positions, which can largely prevent auto deleverage from the counterparts. And by doing this, we've seen zero auto deleverage in yesterday, and even with like such huge volatilities, right? And the third part is
for a new exchange, a new system too.
Yes, it worked perfectly.
I was extremely impressed.
Yes, and also the third point is because we have such fast engine, and we are able to do a smart liquidation. What does it mean? In most exchanges, once there's a liquidation, your position is just squared down to the bankruptcy price. But the difference in our market is, okay, there is a liquidation on your account, and we just first close your account by placing an order in the market. Once the first order executed by the best price, we'll quickly do a recalculation on your balance. If it meets the margin requirements immediately after first trade, then your account is back to safe again.
Okay.
Lots of exchanges can offer this kind of smart liquidation because it's a lot of work for matching engine, but
because of the scalability and of our matching engine, we can deliver this type of service.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So in time, because I think really times of stress is when a platform sort of shines, right? I think that's where Binance is able to shine in terms of like high volume.
Yes.
When everybody else kind of crashes, we're still trading, right? And the same here. It seems like even when times of distress, we're not cleaning up. We're not sort of taking out the clients.
There's a reminder in your account, and
there's like act now.
Yes.
Right. Put your money in or get called. Right.
Yes.
So no, that's really, really, really cool. Can you talk a little bit about what you see? Because I think markets, I would say it's semi-warm in terms of competition levels. Right. I don't think it's like sort of white hot.
Right.
But it's also not like 2 years ago where there's only one player, right? Or two players.
Right.
I think the market's sort of heating up a little bit on futures, given the sort of the lack of price movements or downward price movements across sort of, I would say, the altcoin industry, right? A lot of action has primarily been like 70 or 80% of the trading has been in Bitcoin. Right. And futures plays a big part of that, right? Where do you see this industry or this, the competitive dynamics over the next few months, right? Because I'm sure you keep the pulse pretty tight on the various competitors we have out there, right?
Well, I think first of all, the best product will win the market down the road, and so. Like I said, okay, 2 or 3 years ago, there was only 2 players.
1.5.
1.5, yes, right. So then the system and product was not designed to handle new flows and also clients trading types. Nowadays, 2 or 3 years later, right? So
because there's a lot more sophisticated people in the market now.
Right. Yeah. So that's why I think although there's a lot of new exchange or existing exchange offering futures product. In the end of the day, and the best system, best product, and best service will win the market.
Yeah, I think so, because the point that I'm trying to get to is it's not like just because you're an incumbent, you have an existing large size trade book. If your product becomes outdated, then the money will leave your exchange, right? Would you say that's a fair statement?
Well, the second point I didn't say is so liquidity still values, right?
So liquidity still matters, right?
Still matters.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, I gotcha.
Because the futures market is different than spot market, and the liquidity is closed, and it has a certain value to bring more liquidity, right? So unless it becomes I came from the traditional market, and down the road, not many new exchanges got tremendous success as CME, except one, which was ICE, right? So they launched product at the right time, and they put a lot of efforts with a lot of supporters, and they got win the war of crude oil, right? And besides the best product technology, and we also need to put lots of efforts to acquire new users by providing the right features and also right service, and different clients in different country has different trading habits. So I would say it's a combination of the best product and the best service.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of ICE, pretty big news this week happened as well. Bakkt launched their physical delivered Bitcoin exchange on Monday.
Right.
What is physically delivered Bitcoin? What does that mean? I don't know.
Okay. So in traditional world, it means if you enter a 1 month, for example, gold position, then if you hold position all the way till 1 month, then you expect you can receive 1 contract worth of literally physical gold. And in crypto world means there's a physical Bitcoin will be deposited to your account.
If you hold the contract to the expiration.
Yes, correct. And previously, CME also launched Bitcoin Futures, but it was cash settled, means it's based on
the price.
Okay. Yes.
But why did they do that then?
Well, I would assume because the cash settled products has flows of price manipulations, right? And it's very difficult to prevent that without offering the real assets
as the underlying asset and the contract. Do you see Bakkt as a competition for Binance Futures?
Well, I don't think so, because basically Bakkt is targeting at different client segments. They are mostly targeting at US clients, US institutional clients, and their service and product is very different than our products. Well, they only offers trading hours 7 days, not 5 days a week. Okay. Right. So
they close for the weekend.
Yes, they close for the weekend, and
crypto doesn't sleep.
Crypto doesn't sleep. Yes, correct. So I would say we focus on different market, and we offer different product.
Talking about sort of competition, I think there are some other players, right? And then I think we're starting to see crypto or options coming into the market as well. Do you see any potential in that space?
Well, historically speaking, in traditional world, options is trading a lot less than futures. It has certain clients of segments, and because options is more like insurance funds. Insurance, you can just buy as an insurance to protect your risk. I would say it has a certain usage, but it's more the personal choice by clients.
And last question. One of the things that was kind of interesting that took place was actually the battle for futures, right? Where I think Binance ended up buying, I would say, a competing platform, JEX.
Right.
and then the two platforms were pitted against each other in the market.
By the end of the day, I think whatever works best for the market and also best to work for the Binance, then we'll just win the markets, right?
Yep.
It's a healthy competition, I would say, internally and also externally. But personally, I wouldn't view Jax as a competitor.